Thank you all for your attendance, first and foremost. I'm Siemens Process Automation Account Manager for the Mid-Atlantic region. I'll be hosting and moderating the conversation today. So first off, we'd like to say thank you and welcome to the ISA Raleigh chapter for hosting us, and especially to Mike Baldoff for helping organize. And thank you to all of you for your attendance today. Today, we'll be discussing technologies to address industry trends and enable digitalization in the pharmaceutical industry, allowing products to get to lab from lab to patient more swiftly. Compliance with GMP and all requirements of the law are essential factors. The introduction of process analytical technology, supporting a right first-time production process, combined with electronic batch records and manufacturing execution systems, allows for production optimization to occur while still adhering to and improving cGMP compliance. Today's webinar will introduce these technologies and explain industry initiatives to implement them in pharmaceutical manufacturing. We thank you for joining and look forward to a lively Q&A after the presentations. With that, I will hand over to my colleague, Austin Little, to begin the discussion.
Thank you, Elliot. I think you just need to promote me so I can share. Perfect. Okay, so I'm pulling up this. All right, so good morning, good afternoon, everyone. As Elliot said, my name is Austin Little, and I'll be discussing the topic of paperless manufacturing today. Okay, so we'll start with the concept of the digital enterprise, more specifically MOM, which stands for Manufacturing Operations Management, and how this enables us to transform information from a digital twin to a real production environment. So as seen here on the graphic, we can see we have a digital twin of the product as well as the production. On the right-hand side, you'll see where this is moving towards the real production and the enablement and use of the automation platform. So the virtual product is driving specifications to the virtual production, which is enabling us to commission the real production. And with a closed feedback loop, we can use the real production information to validate our virtual digital twin of the production and verify our digital twin of the product. Okay, so through smart manufacturing, we're using the MOM, or Manufacturing Operation Management, to really be the digital brain of the manufacturing operations. So this is kind of lying over top of the real production, which is using an automation platform. And the MOM comprises and pulls together the people, personnel on your manufacturing floor, as well as the tools and equipment being used for the manufacturing process, as well as the actual process itself, and guiding operators through the steps they need to complete. Okay, so the role of the MOM for smart manufacturing is really to bridge the gap between our virtual product and production to the real product and real production. So on the left-hand side, you'll see the virtual product and production being shown here, which may include a system such as the PLM, Product Lifecycle Management, to enable us to smoothly design and transfer the engineering design from the virtual and simulated product to the actual physical product. So the MOM here in the middle is going to enable us to do smart orchestration of manufacturing and quality operations, and really bridging this gap between the virtual to the physical world. On the right-hand side, you'll see the real product. So this will contain more of our physical equipment and automation platforms. And we are able to also pull some of this contextualized data from the real production process back through the MOM platform in a closed loop process for continuous and proactive improvements. We can also enable the connection to the smart connection to cloud. So this enables us to do big data and IoT. Okay, so now we'll look at the horizontal and vertical integration of these systems. Again, the MOM platform is it comprises of multiple different systems that have different functionalities and purposes. And it's really the glue that pulls the information both from higher level business systems such as an ERP or a PLM, as well as a lower level system such as the instrumentation or automation on the physical equipment in your facility. So MOM has multiple different functions. We'll go through some of those in the next few slides, but a couple here highlighting smart planning and scheduling for optimization of your assets, closed loop quality and closed loop manufacturing, as well as production system engineering, actually pulling the data up from the automation system, as well as driving communication down to it. All right, so the key topic here, obviously with the title of our presentation being paperless manufacturing, many of our clients are currently operating on a paper-based or maybe a hybrid paper-based platform today. The key issue around this more traditional paper-based process is you have a high number of different systems as well as manual interfaces. If you don't have everything digitally enabled, you may have physical operators typing in information, which can lead to human error and deviations in your process. And moving to a paperless process will reduce this number of interfaces and also cut back on the number of deviations and alerts that you'll ultimately be seen in the process itself. So here on the right, we see this triangle view. And when I refer to the lower and higher level systems, this is really what I'm referring to. The lower level being in the field with your process instrumentation and analytics. Could be your remote I/O, actually physically communicating with equipment, up through the automation layer, which is enabled by typically a process control system. And then the MES layer, also referred to sometimes as MOM, is really bridging that gap between the automation and field devices up through to your higher level business systems such as ERP. Next, we'll take a look at the MOM portfolio that Siemens offers. The MOM portfolio is branded Siemens Ops Center, and Ops Center comprises of multiple different offerings, which include MES or Manufacturing Execution Systems, branded as Ops Center Execution. So the third one listed here on the right is what we'll dive into a little bit deeper. It's the Ops Center Execution Pharma, which is specifically designed for the life sciences industry. And a couple other platforms that we'll lightly touch on are EMI. So this is your Enterprise Manufacturing Intelligence Systems, APS for Advanced Planning and Scheduling, and RD&L or Research Development and Laboratory. LIMS might also be a common terminology that you're hearing in the industry, or a Lab Information Management System. And then we have Quality. So this is enabled by our Ops Center Quality and Team Center Quality. So the Ops Center portfolio really enables our clients to implement the digital twin in real production, as well as orchestrate the planning of manufacturing and quality operations. Enables us to have this continuous closed loop for improvement, both in our physical and virtual process, and bridging the gap between enterprise systems and those lower level automation platforms. It's also enabling us to push information into the cloud for big data and IoT. Okay. So more specifically, we'll take a look at the portfolio really designated for the life sciences industry. What we've discussed prior can be really applied to any process industry, but here we'll take a closer look at the specific portfolio elements designated for life sciences. Again, so at the top, you'll have the higher level business systems commonly in industry. You'll have an ERP. The most common one is SAP, you may have heard of. You can also have a product lifecycle management tool, such as Team Center. And then really the bridge here in the middle is what we've been discussing, the MOM portfolio here for manufacturing operation management. So within MOM, there's could be several different tools and systems that you're utilizing for different purposes. One could be for taking care of planning and scheduling of your assets. So making sure you're optimizing the equipment and personnel and locations in your facility to really push the product out the door quicker. Below that is a LIMS or Laboratory Information System. So this is responsible for gathering sampling information and data from the actual product or ingredients that are going into production. To the right of that is really the bulk of our topic today, the MES, or Manufacturing Execution System, branded as the Op Center Execution Pharma. It's the MES for life sciences. So this is the kind of glue that holds really all of these systems together and pulls information in, specifically for batch records. In the industry, it's very important to record any input or output that goes into a manufacturing process. So this is housing a lot of that information for reporting later on. And then below, we'll see the automation layer. So this is your typical process control system, or SCADA, and this is pulling information and driving a lot of our process down on the field. Later on, Pam will discuss the topic of RTRT, which will comprise mostly of our SIPAT, or the process analytical technology. So I won't go into too detail on that, but she will. And next, we will go into a little bit more detail on the MES platform here, Op Center Execution Pharma. So MES really enables us to do paperless manufacturing. If you think of a paper-based process, you're going to be recording off physically with pen and paper, which results in a very lengthy paper documentation trail, which ultimately will be a very lengthy process to review before releasing a product. So an MES really has its fingers in a different number of different functionalities within a manufacturing process. So the key tools that an MES will provide will be a master batch record tool. This enables us to simplify parameter management and enables a graphical workflow of our process. We also have a electronic batch record. So ultimately, we will get to a batch record that has all the information of our process, any deviations or alerts that occurred throughout, and maybe enables us to make that decision at the end whether to approve or reject the process. It's going to guide the operators through the process step by step in this workflow to make sure that they are performing the tasks they need to perform at the time they need to perform them. We also have key pieces here in material and equipment management. So material management would be checking and controlling the inbound and outbound goods that are going into the process itself, as well as the product coming out. Most commonly, this is where your interface with an ERP system would take place, whereas the ERP is really managing a lot of that ordering, as well as material management. You have equipment management to really enable us to make sure that we're using the proper equipment, it's in the proper status, making sure it's clean and ready for use. And this is where a lot of the automation integration is feeding information. Weigh and dispense is a big topic in the life sciences industry. So making sure that we have the proper amount of ingredients going into a product is very key here. Making sure that our scales are calibrated and accurate. Packaging, ultimately at the end of a production cycle, making sure that the packaging of the product is done correctly. MES plays a role in this as well for line management instructions, making sure operators are packaging the product up correctly. And then you also have a key piece of MES, because it can work in a silo, but you really gain the benefit of utilizing this paperless manufacturing through integration with other systems. So this could be the higher level business systems such as ERP or a planning and scheduling tool. And then to the automation layer, it's very key to pull this information up from the equipment itself, as well as drive some communication and parameters down to the automation platform. Okay. So the value gained from implementing a paperless manufacturing solution is time to market. So we're really bridging the gap between research and development and manufacturing, as well as the effective and secure release of batches. So as I stated before, most commonly this is done in a paper process, in a notebook with handwritten results, information, sampling, signatures. But through an electronic paperless manufacturing solution, you're able to enable what is called review or release by exception. So the system itself is built in a rigid, structured way that we're controlling all of these parameters. So you're really only going to review any exceptions or alerts that occurred through your process, and take action on approving or rejecting based off of those exceptions. So you also have regulatory compliance and quality. So this is a key piece in the life sciences industry, making sure that we are adhering to all of the FDA and industry guidelines. So with compliance and quality, you have full traceability, being able to see and backtrack where certain raw materials, ingredients went into a particular batch or lot. The third value prop here is the optimization and operational excellence. So through paperless manufacturing, you have electronic work instructions for the operators that they see exactly what they need to do, when they need to do it, and it's going to guide them through that process step by step. You also have seamless integration to these other layers, such as automation systems. And a very big one here is globalization. So this gives us the capability to operate as a global enterprise and have real-time visibility across all of your facilities worldwide. It's also enabling us to have standardization, which will speed up engineering design and make a lot of this validation simpler. Okay. So I introduced kind of the review by exception concept. Next, I'm going to be handing it over to Pam, and she will be discussing the topic of real-time release testing through the use of PAT.
Thank you, Austin. When you think about review by exception, the industry is currently being very challenged by making sure that our drugs are getting to our customers in the fastest time possible, so that those patients that need them will receive them as quick as possible. So as we think about that, one of the limiting features would be the testing time. So we don't want our drugs to wait in a warehouse to be released after they're manufactured. We would like to see them get to the patients as quickly as possible. In order to do that, a key technology that would enable a faster release would be the real-time release testing. And in Siemens, our real-time release testing tool is known as SIPAT. Stands for Siemens Process Analytical Technologies, where it is the quality data management tool for the life sciences industry. So I'm going to begin with a brief overview on what is PAT, what is process analytical technology, and when did it begin? It began in about 2006 and with a publication from the FDA that you see here, in which the FDA said that we don't truly understand how we manufacture our processes, and they would like to bring innovation and technology into that manufacturing to get a better understanding and control. If you think of the way that we validate our processes, is that we do a run, we make sure that we can do it 3 times exactly the same, and we fix that process. So that means if you have variations, disturbances, deviations that would create as inputs, which could be a result of your raw materials into that fixed process, you could have some deviations within the quality as it comes out into the final product good, especially with continuous manufacturing, which we're starting to see a much greater adoption in our industry. And then we go and retest those products, and we take a batch sample, and it either passes or fails, and we can release the product. By enabling QBD with the PAT technology and APC, which stands for Advanced Process Control, we can create a more dynamic, adjustable box where we can make sure that if we operate within these conditions, that we're able to automatically adjust to any parameter or variable input changes to ensure that the quality of our product is consistent throughout the manufacturing, enabling real-time release testing. So when we talk about quality data, there are so many areas within our manufacturing in which quality can exist. So we have our offline data, in which we take samples of both the production and the raw material, which we store in a LIMS application. We have real-time data, which we collect directly from our process in continuous historians or through the integration of PAT analyzers and spectral data. We also have offline analysis that we use to improve our processes, determine root causes, and enable our product development, as well as real-time analysis where we can use real-time models. We're getting to a point where we do continuous quality verification and advanced process control, or the MPC stands for Model Predictive Control. And what we need is the glue to put all this quality data and integrate it together. Now you're probably realizing I missed a major part, which is over here on the right, which is our automation system, which captures all that real-time data. And then we have these PAT analyzers. The PAT analyzers have become popular in the market starting about 2008, and I'd say have taken a great adoption within the past 5 years. They are able now to deliver on what they have promised, and some very popular ones that you will hear about in the market are NIR, Raman, and some of the major leaders there are the Bruker or the Kaiser, enabling those spectral data analyzers. And what makes these unique is they go right into our application. They are an online analyzer. So we can now capture that data directly within online. We do not have to take it offline as we have in the past and do as much in the lab. And when we talk about PAT, about 10 years ago, somebody would say, oh yeah, we're installing tons of PAT. And what they really truly meant was they're putting these analyzers in. But there's a whole honeycomb of skill sets that are required, as well as innovation and technologies that get you to the true RTRT, real-time release testing, or the abilities of the advanced process control. And it starts with the analyzers, but it includes the R&D departments to create the modeling with your design of experiments, the data analysis people looking at this data, mining the data, getting the knowledge from this data. And in order to do that, we need to make sure that it's properly stored and that we can retrieve it. And then we talk about the automation. When I go into meetings to talking about PAT, I am thrilled when they have the automation team already in the meeting. And that would be a recommendation to my audience, is when you're looking at these PAT technologies, involve your automation teams, because even though I see PAT commonly started in R&D, as soon as it gets to the manufacturing floor, your automation team becomes critical. And when we talk about Siemens and PAT, we have the whole portfolio to be able to support our install base. We have a dedicated team to the PAT. In our corporate technologies team, that's kind of our Siemens R&D, we have dedicated persons researching the integration of PAT into life sciences. Of course, we have the automation expertise with our process control specialists. We have a LIMS. Austin referred to it in his presentation, and we have the ability to work locally here as well as a global team. And we have strategic partnerships regarding PAT across our applications. So when we think about our production, we have our control platforms. You can see it here on my bioreactor, in which you would install a DCS or a PLC to do your traditional univariate type control and monitoring, like we control our temperature and our pressure. Those are things that we can directly read and control. Works beautifully at the automation level. But in order to know where we stand quality-wise, we're looking at a bioreactor, and is it time to harvest or continue? We can sometimes tell by time, but how we truly know is we take a sample. We take that sample, we take it over to our lab, we do the tests, we enter it into our LIMS application, and when it gets to the right quality state, we release it to the next unit process or to the market. Now, when you look at that bioreactor, what if you could get more information? What if you truly knew what was on inside and you didn't need to take all those samples anymore to the lab? Now that's where the PAT technology fits in, and that is where. So we would integrate some PAT analyzers into the bioreactor. I'm going to use the Kaiser Ramen, for example, in which we can monitor glucose. And in this glucose application, there is no univariate way to measure this. We call it a fingerprint. So you can look at all the different components within your bioreactor, getting into an MVDA multivariate data analysis to determine when is the proper glucose, or do I need to add some more to keep my cells alive. So we feed all this data from the control system and the analyzers to the Siemens SciPat application, where we collect it and we time align it. And I'll go into that a little bit more. And then we can feed it to a chemometrics package, which does the MVDA calculations in real time. So we can do real-time predictions to determine what our CQAs are, which are our critical quality attributes, which are what we are trying to measure as well in the lab. So if we can do that now real time, you can start to see where we can include now a third-party application for advanced process control. You can also commonly do it in your control platforms. They usually do come with APC or MPC controllers, where we can get to an advanced process control, and we can manipulate and monitor and change those set points, which are our critical process parameters, to ensure that what is going on in our bioreactor is always at the proper quality. And in my glucose example, if it was time to do another feed of the media to increase that yield of our cells, we would do it, and it would no longer be at a time based every 24 to 48 hours. You would do it when it is required, and you can see considerably increases within the yield of that bioreactor. So that would be an example where we can do advanced process control. And finally, we can also capture those real-time predictive model CQAs and enable real-time release testing. And when you enable the real-time release testing, what you're doing is taking all that time lag and effort, external effort that's going on in your lab, and you're getting it real time. So now we know exactly that this product has all the necessary CQAs to continue and is at the proper quality. And I gave an example here of a bioreactor, but it doesn't matter. It can go across multiple processes that we see in the pharmaceutical industry. The one that's captured here is continuous manufacturing for oral solid dosage. And we also see it in continuous manufacturing for biologics. And the reason that it's so popular in continuous specifically is because of the time alignment throughout the manufacturing and the critical back and forth on how one product parameter in one step can affect the down the stream line of your continuous line. So I mentioned the Siemens solution to this is SciPat for Siemens PAT, and it consists of 4 major parts. If you look in the middle, you'll see the 2 upper ones: data collection, monitoring, and control. Those are the real-time applications, and the 2 at the bottom, the data mining and reporting, are the offline or after. And what we do is, if for data collection, if you follow me around the circle, we'll start at the DCS and PLCs. So we can collect the real-time data from your control system via OPC and time align that with the spectral data that you're capturing now from these inserted PAT analyzers. We capture your metadata or informational data from your MES, your Ops Center Execution Pharma, your batch systems or your SCADA, so that we put knowledge and context around what we're collecting. We can feed the LIMS application. So any of those offline tests would also be important to know to determine this model for do that predictive MVDA, which we then feed to your chemometric solutions. SciPat supports many chemometric solutions on the market, which would include Simca, Scrambler, MATLAB, and Pharma MV, to name a few. And sometimes, I don't find it as common, you can also integrate your lab notebooks from your R&D to capture some of that metadata. And then when you get to your true real-time release testing, you're going to need to share it with your ERP, because that's the master to know exactly where your batch is for your real-time release. So we can integrate SciPat with ERP systems as well. So I'm going to go through those concepts in a little bit more detail. So I mentioned that we could connect directly to the analyzer to capture that data. And what makes it so unique is because it is spectral data. It's not just one point. You're probably coming from ISA in the automation world, so comfortable with univariate data, which is just one point data. But this is thousands of points of data. So that create a spectrum, a line, that gives us the information. And our systems in traditional automation and historians are not designed to capture that data. They are designed for the univariate data, and we want to be able to capture that full spectrum as a full memory of data and be able to utilize that data, pull it up later, because we are 21 CFR Part 11 compliant, and we have to be able to retrieve our data at any time and store it in a system. And then I mentioned that we capture our lab data, and what's so interesting about the lab data, it's offline data, and it has nothing, the time delay between that offline data and your real-time process data is off. So how can I time align that back to the right point to be able to continue to develop a model in which that data is feeding the importance of my model and keeping it in line with my real-time data in a real-time environment? And then we add the different components to be able to contextualize it. We do the real time. Again, I keep mentioning real time because that's where this fits in. This is not an offline application. We're putting it right on the manufacturing floor to do those CQA calculations and then the visualizations of the data collection and the spectrum that you are seeing. And how we do this is through a method. A method you might consider is a recipe. I view it as an information block in which you are trying to do a prediction. And you want a certain prediction or the CQA to come out of this method, but there's a lot of things that are going to feed it. And you can see here the collector. Now I mentioned the PAT analyzers and the process data, which we can connect to via OPC, the LIMS. And we can also enter manual data, so the operators or the scientists can put specific points in at specific times. And we do this through a variety of collectors. The info data, that's the informational data. We can also talk to your automation system to be able to say when I need to start a certain method based on a certain trigger point in your automation. And then visualization, which I'd say you see more commonly in R&D. When you get to the manufacturing, through the SciPat traditionally runs in the background, and it would talk to your automation system in event that it had an alarm. And then we do everything with the chemometric packages real time, and you can see here those that I mentioned that we support in our calculations. So when you think about a collector, especially for the analyzers, they get very interesting. And what we have in our SciPat product is a driver. It can talk directly to certain analyzers. It tells them when to start. It can do the background whitewash data collection. It can capture all the parameters of the exact setup for the analyzer. It's a very thorough connection to the analyzers. And these are the ones that are most commonly found in our manufacturing, in our industry, but there's others out there on the market as well in which we can do just file transfers or other ways of connecting. And we're also seeing a much larger adoption of OPC UA at the analyzers, and we can support OPC ADI as well. So when you get to the monitoring and control, I've talked a lot about the data capture. The data alignment is very important. If you're currently doing PAT in R&D, you probably have somebody dedicated to do all the data alignment currently in Excel. It's a very time-consuming, tedious process where SciPat can do this real time. And when you connect it to your automation, an analyzer might come in for every 5 minutes, depending on what application you have, but your continuous automation information is all the time. So how can you take something that's coming at a time-based application and align it with material data that you're collecting continuously and make sense out of this? So through SciPat, we're able to take the automation data and we can do calculations where we can take the max of a given time period, the min, an average, whatever you feel is the most important way to align your analyzer data with your continuous data. We then feed that to your packages of your chemometrics, in which two applications are very popular. The PLS is the partial least squared, and the PCA is a principal component analysis. And these are chemometrics MVDA calculations that we use to predict the critical quality attributes. And you can see these two shown here within our SciPat screens. The top being a quantitative prediction, in which the example being shown is a dryer, in which we're drying some oral solid dosage materials, and we want to know the optimum time in which those materials are dry instead of just doing time-based, and we can do that by a point of use. This captured below is a qualitative prediction, in which we're looking at a golden batch trajectory to make sure that we remain within our golden batch application. Now, all this data is available within the SciPat database, so your scientists can use the data mining and reporting, in which they can go and monitor, capture the real-time data, use this data to feed their offline models that they created in their chemometrics packages, and be able to do that via an offline model optimization. So even though you have these offline models that we're building, we use them to do the predictive analytics, and then we come back and we can improve those models by using the data that we continuously capture within SciPat. And because SciPat is 21 CFR Part 11 compliance, we can determine every batch that you ran, what model you used for that prediction, and track everything so that you remain within compliance. And that's truly where SciPat brings multiple benefits to our industry, that you're not doing that in any offline system. You're not doing it through a manual change control each time you need to go and adjust your models. And with SciPat's integration to your automation system, we can determine if those CQAs, if they're getting out of tolerance, we can alarm through your DCS system. We have the ability to do the online monitoring, detection, and deviation. And finally, you can do real-time release testing through your critical quality attributes and an ultimate goal of advanced process control. Now, do my customers all first get to RTRT or APC? No. They look at SciPat and they use this to capture information to gain more knowledge into their process, and then they continue on to the advanced applications of RTRT and APC. What I'm showing here is a business case for one of our key global customers, in which they are reporting applications for reduced full-time equivalents with their implementation of their SciPat system. So some of the graphs you can see over here on the left regarding how many FTEs they have within the lab, how much faster they can get the market out through the testing. So they reduced their cycle times by 75% with the implementation of real-time release testing. It's not limited to one application. They use it across the globe in all of their drug manufacturing, which is both small and large molecule, continuous and batch applications. And an example of a continuous one down here in the left corner, there's two. A hot melt extrusion HME application, in which you can use PAT data with SciPat to monitor the temperatures along your extruder. And finally, Consigma line by Gaia, popular in the continuous manufacturing of OSD, in which SciPat plays a key role. And finally, you can see the multiple global rollouts in which PAT has brought comfort and benefits that include real-time release testing, batch tech transfer, all the different things across the globe. It's not a limited application. So I'm going to continue sum up my presentation here, we starting out with where Siemens' heart is in the process control system. How we do controls with the univariate data in both our PLCs or DCS. And then we introduced this PAT technology, bringing in that spectrum and bringing in multivariate data analysis capabilities, in which these two platforms talk to each other via OPC, and together can capture the true process real time, enabling real-time release. Now you'll see here in the middle that I added an op center execution pharma. So with SciPat, I can do real-time release testing, but I am missing the batch record. So when you integrate op center execution pharma, which is your electronic batch record that you release by exception or review by exception, with the integration of a SciPat solution to do real-time release testing, you have a complete ability to enable real-time release, because now you have all the information from the process, the operators, and the quality systems in a complete package that allows you to know that your drug was manufactured at the highest quality and is within your parameters for release. That completes my part of the presentation today, and I'm going to come back to Elliot to see what questions we may have in the queue.
Thank you, Pam and Austin, for excellent presentations here. To the audience, if you do have any questions, any additional questions beyond what we've received so far, please feel free to submit those via the chat, either to all the panelists or to me directly, and I'll be glad to ask those here now. One that did come in, I'll address this one to Pam. It was interesting how you combined the two different topics of paperless and PAT. Typically, we see those presented separately, and this attendee had asked, why are paperless manufacturing and PAT typically presented in different sessions?
Oh, good question. And I'd say even in Siemens, we usually do never combine these two into a common true real-time release topic. And I think the reasons is that for PAT, we usually introduce the topic in an R&D environment, and in MOM and Ops Center, it's usually at a higher level, maybe an IT or a global deployment. So I'd say that they're usually not coupled, because the audience that's looking at either technology are different places within the customer's organization, but together they bring the true benefit that we're promoting in the industry.
Excellent. Definitely, I think you demonstrated well the benefit that they can provide with the combined electronic batch record. Another question that's come in, what is the biggest challenge when implementing the Ops Center MES module?
I think that was probably directed towards me, so I can take that one. I'd say the biggest challenge is really knowing where to start. You know, an MES is a very complex system, but it can be very simplified if you know really where to start implementing it. So usually a lot of our clients will implement it in a phased solution, most commonly starting in maybe a weigh and dispense part of the process, where you're really managing the materials going into your manufacturing process and making sure that those ingredients are weighed out properly and tracked and then reviewed. You know, another challenge may be if you're doing this in a silo in a facility. We see a lot of times MES solutions being implemented on a global scale. So you have global engineering teams from multiple different sites around the world collaborating together to really build standardized templates and building blocks for their electronic work instructions. So this will simplify a lot of the engineering that goes into it.
Thank you, Austin. One has come in for you, Pam. Is real-time release testing a visionary solution, or is it currently being applied in manufacturing today?
It is being applied in manufacturing today. And Merck Sharpendome, one of our key customers, has presented on this topic a few years ago at an ISPE annual meeting about how they enabled real-time release testing for a critical drug in their portfolio known as Januvia. It's a diabetes drug. So I can confirm that I know through that presentation that real-time release testing is popular in our industry. It is being used, and it's benefiting many of our patients that are on that drug. And that's just one that I know of because of its public presentation at that event. I'm sure there are others, Elliot.
Thank you, Pam. One for you, Austin. This one is in regards to automation and automation integration. I know this is a key question because it's crucial to capturing the full value of an EBR system. Can Siemens MES technology connect to automation platforms from other vendors?
Yes, and I mean, obviously, in the industry, we have multiple different automation solutions. You may be utilizing other platforms from, Emerson, Rockwell, Honeywell, these other companies that supply automation platforms. So as a MES provider, we can't necessarily just pigeonhole ourselves to just being able to communicate with the Siemens automation platforms. So we have experience doing this worldwide, even here in the U.S. Integrating with the likes of Delta V and Rockwell. So these are used through different interface methodologies, could be through OPC or web services are commonly used to communicate with third-party automation platforms.
I'm going to chime in here, Elliot, because Austin, in SciPat, when I can also talk to third parties, but when you use our own platform, there's key advantages. I have some faceplates and other things that would integrate with the SciPat when you use our PCS7. And coming back to Op Center, there are advantages when we have a Siemens. And I think if you just chime in, I know that both platforms can work with third parties and both have advantages when you are a full Siemens.
That's right, Pam, and you really gain a lot of benefits from having that Siemens to Siemens communication. Specifically with Op Center, we have the batch integration layer to PCS7, which really enables us to speed up the engineering process and have a clean communication between the two.
Excellent. Thank you guys for the comments there. I know that's really important to this discussion. One additional question has come in for you, Austin. Is MES part of Op Center? I would assume that this is asking, MES functionality, how is that incorporated into the Op Center portfolio?
Right. So we went through kind of in the beginning of the presentation, the concept of MOM, Manufacturing Operation Management. And this is kind of an umbrella term that comprises of a lot of different solutions. So MES is certainly, it falls into the Op Center portfolio, but more specifically, Op Center Execution. And we covered more specific Op Center Execution Pharma, but there's a whole suite of execution systems for multiple different industries, and they're tailored to specific industries to meet the different regulatory or requirements of that industry. So MES is definitely a piece of the overall Op Center portfolio.
Pam, one for you. What is the first step in deploying a PAT solution?
I'd say that traditionally, my customers have now purchased an analyzer. So they have gone out and in their R&D environment, they have an analyzer within their possession. And they are looking or struggling with the collection of the data, the tracking of the models, and that specifically that time alignment component, in which they have their PhDs investing a lot of time into Excel data alignment, and they want to use those engineers and PhD scientists to do what their skills are. So they come and look to, they say, I need something that's compliant with the life sciences. I need 21 CFR Part 11, and they'll come to Siemens regarding those pain points that they have in their organization. There are situations where they have already gone to the manufacturing floor. And in those situations, they're definitely looking for the compliance aspect because it is a requirement in the manufacturing. So I'd say I traditionally find it in R&D, but there have been some late customers that have started to look into what they've found value already in R&D, take it to manufacturing, and realize that this is a missing piece in their PAT QBD design, in which Siemens has a perfect fit.
Excellent. Thank you, Pam. And just being cognizant of time, we're getting close to the top of the hour, so I'll ask one more to you, Austin. This presenter or this attendee asked, I'm hearing about new devices such as biometrics and RTLS, which I believe is real-time locating services, being used in conjunction with MOM and MES solutions. Is Siemens taking advantage of these new devices?
Yeah, it's a great question. And we could probably honestly have an entire session just around that particular topic. So yeah, in the industry, we're really, it's not just Siemens, it's the other players. They're taking advantage of these new devices, whether it be biometric bracelets or augmented reality glasses, to really enable hands-free, management and signatures and data entry into the system. Because if you think within the life sciences industry, when you're in a manufacturing environment, you're usually fully gowned up with gloves. So entering data onto a keyboard or a tablet may become difficult. So enabling these other devices is very key. And with the topic of RTLS, this is something that is very interesting, specifically to me, because the MES platform is always managing the location of your assets, whether that be equipment, personnel, workstations, material. So the utilization of RTLS and using these tags to automatically update the location of these assets just is going to speed up and verify and make sure that these locations are correct in a more fluid manner. So that was a great question.
Yeah, good answer, Austin. I know that we're addressing a lot of those with our innovation program at Ops Center right now. So thanks for giving us a quick overview. I think we're going to close the Q&A with that. If there are any additional questions, Pam has got our contact information shown on the screen. Please feel free to email us. You're welcome to call me anytime. We thank you for your attendance today and hope that you learned something about how these technologies can really be a benefit to your operations. We look forward to speaking with you in the future, and thank you for your interest in Siemens.
Thank you, everyone.